The sun burned hot over the endless golden desert. Jake, a human explorer, walked slowly across the sand with his scanner in hand. He was tired, covered in sweat, and almost ready to return to base. But just as he turned to leave, his scanner beeped softly. It was weak, like a heartbeat coming from deep underground. Jake stopped, confused. There were no life forms in this part of the planet, or at least, that's what the record said. He looked around, saw nothing but dunes, and checked the signal again. Still there, slow and steady. He knelt down and brushed away the top layer of sand, revealing something hard beneath. With effort he began to dig. His fingers scraped against metal, smooth and cold. An old panel, hidden just below the surface. Jake cleared more sand until a small hatch appeared, almost invisible to the eye. It was shaped like a circle, ancient symbols carved around its edge. He pressed his palm against it, and it lit up dim at first, then brighter. A soft click echoed, and the hatch slowly opened. Inside, a tunnel led downward into darkness. Jake grabbed a light and climbed in, his heart pounding in his chest. It felt like something was waiting for him below. The tunnel was narrow, the walls made of dark stone and strange metal. The air smelled dry, old, untouched for centuries. After a long crawl, he dropped into a large chamber. It was silent, filled with dust and broken machines. In the center stood a tall crystal coffin, glowing faintly with blue light. Jake stepped closer and gasped. Inside the coffin lay a woman, an alien unlike any he had seen before. Her skin was soft silver, her hair floated gently in a strange liquid. She looked young, peaceful, almost as if she was just sleeping. But his scanner showed no heartbeat, no breath. Still, the earlier signal had come from here. He walked around the coffin, checking the controls nearby. The words were not in any known language, but the buttons glowed when he touched them. One pulse from the scanner beep, then another beep, and suddenly the chamber trembled. The lights in the room flickered, and the crystal glowed brighter. The woman inside moved, just slightly. A twitch in her fingers. Jake froze, staring in disbelief. Was she alive? Had he just woken her up? He looked at her face and saw her eyelids flutter for a moment, then go still again. He checked his scanner again, now showing faint brain activity. "Come on, you're still in there," Jake whispered, his voice shaking. He pulled out his portable oxygen tank and attached a tube to a crack in the coffin. Oxygen flowed in, and bubbles formed in the liquid around her. Her chest rose gently once, then twice, then nothing. No, Jake said, panicking. He pulled out his emergency energy core, placed it against the side of the coffin, and activated a short pulse. Her body jerked slightly. Still no heartbeat. Jake tried again, stronger this time. Another shock, and suddenly gasped. Her mouth opened slightly, and her eyes shot open, glowing with a soft white light. She coughed then, choked, then gasped again. Jake stumbled back, shocked and relieved at once. She was alive, barely but alive. The alien woman sat up slowly, weak and confused. Her glowing eyes met Jake's, and for a long second, neither of them spoke. They simply stared. Two lives from different worlds, now connected by fate. Jake finally whispered, "You were buried beneath the sand." She tilted her head, not understanding his words. Her hand reached out and touched his arm gently. In that touch, Jake felt something strange, an energy, a memory, a cry for help. Who was she? Why was she buried? And why now, after all this time, had she awakened? The chamber lights dimmed again, and a soft voice echoed through the walls, not in English, but in some forgotten tongue. The door behind Jake sealed shut. He was now trapped with this strange girl from the past. But one thing was clear: her heart had stopped, and he had brought her back to life. Asterisk sand dust floated in the air like ghostly smoke as Jake backed away from the glowing coffin. The alien girl sat up slowly, her silvery skin reflecting the blue lights. Her eyes blinked without rhythm, like someone waking from a long nightmare. She opened her mouth, but no sound came. Then her head dropped. her body going still again. "No, stay with me," Jake said, rushing to her side. He placed his fingers on her neck, but felt nothing, no pulse, no breath, only cold skin growing. Warmer. The scanner beeped once, then silence again. Jake shook her gently, then harder. Panic rising in his chest, she had come back, even for a second. He had seen her breathe. He wasn't going to lose her now. Grabbing his energy core, he adjusted. The charge, too much could kill her, but doing nothing meant she'd stay dead. He pressed the pulse device against her chest and activated it. A soft jolt surged through her body. Nothing. He tried again. Stronger. Suddenly, she gasped violently and curled up, coughing out fluid from her lungs. Jake stared, heart pounding. She was breathing, weak, slow, but real. Her fingers clenched slightly, then relaxed. Her eyes opened again, this time with more focus. She looked around the chamber, her lips moving but still no words. Then, she looked straight at Jake and tilted her head. Confused but curious, Jake raised his hand slowly, showing he meant no harm. "It's okay, you're safe now," he said softly. She didn't understand the words, but the tone made her pause. Her hand reached toward him again, touching the side of his face gently. Jake felt a small jolt through his skin, like static electricity. Then, a flash in his mind, a desert city. Fires in the sky, shadows running through narrow streets. Her memories, but broken, like puzzle pieces missing half their shapes. She pulled her hand back quickly, clearly exhausted. Jake caught her before she fell back into the coffin. He laid her gently on the floor, wrapping her in his emergency heat cloak. The cold air inside the chamber seemed to get thicker. Jake checked his oxygen level, still enough for hours. But something about the chamber was changing. The lights along the walls were fading, and the hatch above remained sealed. He needed to get her out, but the tunnel had collapsed when he fell. Trapped, Jake looked around the room again, this time searching for anything: tools, exits, controls. Near the corner, a strange pillar stood with symbols glowing faintly. He touched it, and suddenly the girl sat up, her eyes wide in panic. The room trembled as gears deep underground shifted. From the far wall, a hidden door began to open slowly with a deep grinding sound. Behind it, another passage, darker and deeper than before. Jake looked at her, unsure. She nodded weakly, as if saying, "That way." Lifting her carefully, he supported her weight and stepped into the new corridor. It was colder here, the air dry and dead, but his scanner picked up something strange: faint power signatures. Not just from the room, but from her. Her body gave off soft pulses of energy now, small but steady. He looked down at her and said, "You're not just some random alien, are you?" She didn't answer, but her fingers clutched his arm tighter. They moved slowly through the corridor, shadows dancing across the walls. Suddenly, a shape moved ahead, metal, silent, watching. Jake froze, pulling her close. The shape didn't attack, just turned and faded into the next hallway. He knew then, they weren't alone down here. Someone, or something, had built this place for a reason, and they had just awakened a part of it. Maybe something that was never meant to be disturbed. But Jake wasn't turning back. He had brought her back to life. Now, whatever she was, whatever secret she carried, he was a part of it, whether he liked it or not. And the sands above them no longer felt like safety. The walls began to hum softly, as if the hallway itself had a heartbeat. Jake felt it through his boots, a low vibration that matched the rhythm of the alien girl's weak pulse. She was still in his arms, eyes half open, glowing slightly in the dark. Something deep inside this place was connected to her, like the walls were waiting for her to speak. But she said nothing. Her mouth opened, and instead of words, a strange melody escaped. It wasn't singing, and it wasn't language. It was something in between, a haunting, echoing sound that bounced off the metal walls and returned distorted. Jake stopped walking and just listened. The echoes didn't fade, they grew stronger, replying to her like voices in a dream. Then the lights in the corridor shifted color. from soft blue to a pale gold. A panel slid open in the wall beside them, revealing a control sphere floating in midair. Jake stared at it, unsure. The girl slowly reached out her hand, fingers trembling, and touched it. Instantly, the hallway filled with flashing images, scenes from another time, another world. Flashes of war, giant machines walking across burning sand, cities falling into darkness, alien soldiers carrying weapons shaped like serpents, people running, screaming, and at the center of it all her. Standing tall, glowing like a star, Jake turned away, overwhelmed by the emotion pouring out of the control sphere. Then it went dark. Dropping to the floor with a metallic thud, she collapsed again. The vision having drained her, Jake held her close, whispering, "It's okay, I saw it. I saw what happened." He didn't understand all of it. But one thing was clear: she had once been someone important, someone powerful, and someone had wanted her buried and forgotten. He couldn't tell if she was a weapon or a queen, but she wasn't just a girl. Jake carried her further down the tunnel until they reached another room. This one was round and covered in ancient symbols from floor to ceiling. In the center was a raised platform surrounded by faded lights. As soon as they entered, the lights blinked on, one by one. The girl stirred and looked around, her lips moving in silent recognition. Jake set her down gently on the platform, and she sat up slowly. She touched the symbols with her fingers, and they glowed under her skin. Her voice returned not in words, but in layered sounds that tickled the edges of Jake's mind. Somehow he understood her, not fully, but enough to feel her thoughts. She was asking where she was, and who he was. He replied carefully, slowly, "I found you under the sand. I didn't mean to disturb anything, but you were still alive." She blinked, then closed her eyes and sent him another wave of thought: fear, darkness, betrayal. Jake caught an image of her lying inside the crystal coffin, and a hand reaching in to close the lid. Someone she trusted had put her there, not to save her, but to hide her forever. And yet, she had survived. Suddenly, suddenly, noise echoed from the hallway behind them. Heavy footsteps, sharp and mechanical. Jake turned toward the sound, eyes wide. He moved in front of her without thinking, placing himself between her and the threat. The footsteps grew louder, closer, then silence. From the darkness, a figure stepped out, tall, cloaked in metal, its face hidden behind a glowing mask. It didn't attack, it just stared at them. Jake stood still, tense, unsure if it was friend or enemy. The girl whispered something, and the figure paused, as if listening. Then it raised its hand and projected a symbol into the air. 3 circles joined by a single line. The girl gasped, her hand reaching for the symbol, but she couldn't touch it. Her energy was still weak. The figure turned and walked back into the shadows, leaving the symbol floating in the air. Jake looked at her and asked, "What does it mean?" She answered, in the softest voice he had heard from her yet, "It's a warning." The lights in the room began to dim again, and the platform beneath them started to sink. Jake held on to her tightly as they descended into another level. He didn't know what waited below, but he knew now this was no accident. He had awakened something long buried, and the desert had only given up one of its secrets. Not all of them. The floor vanished beneath their feet without a sound. 1 second they stood on solid ground. The next they were falling slowly, like drifting in thick air. Jake held the alien girl close, his breath caught in his chest. The walls around them glowed with strange lights that swirled and pulsed, like they were alive. Then, with a soft thud, they landed on something smooth and soft like glass wrapped in sand. The room around them was silent. Too silent. No humming, no echoes, not even the sound of air moving. Jake stood up carefully, checking the girl, who was still breathing but weaker than before. He looked around, seeing shapes in the shadows, tall statues, or maybe machines, frozen in place. Everything here felt older, heavier, as if it had been forgotten even before the world outside was born. The girl's eyes opened slowly, glowing a soft white again. She looked around with a confused expression, then suddenly tensed. She whispered a sound Jake had never heard before, a single word that felt like thunder inside his head. Instantly, the walls lit up in response, showing symbols that moved like waves. Then the silence broke. A deep grinding noise echoed behind them. Jake turned fast, just in time to see one of the large statues move its head. It wasn't a statue, it was a guardian, made of thick armor and ancient metal. Its eyes locked on them, glowing red with recognition. Jake stepped in front of the girl again, his heart racing, but the guardian didn't attack. Instead, it spoke. In a low rumbling voice that shook the floor, the words made no sense to Jake, but the girl's body reacted instantly. She stood, weak but upright, and responded with the same strange language. The guardian paused, tilted its head, and stepped aside. A hidden door behind it opened, revealing a narrow path of glowing stones. The girl turned to Jake, her face calm but her eyes filled with sorrow. She took his hand for the first time and led him down the path. Jake could feel her energy fading more with each step. He wanted to carry her, but she shook her head. This part, she had to walk on her own. They passed through a corridor filled with carvings, pictures of her people, her city, her fall. Jake saw it all in the stone. A great civilization, once powerful, had buried itself to hide from something. At the center of every image was her, always glowing, always alone. She had been chosen for something. Something too big, too dangerous. The path ended at a circular room with a strange platform in the center. Floating above it was a glowing core beating like a heart. The girl stopped at the edge, looking at it with fear and longing. Jake didn't understand what it was, but he knew it mattered. She stepped forward slowly and placed both hands on the platform. A blinding light filled the room, and her body lifted slightly into the air. Jake shouted, trying to reach her, but a force pushed him back gently. He could only watch as energy flowed from the core into her chest. Her body began to shake, and her eyes turned gold. Then, the room went completely still. She dropped to her knees, gasping. Jake rushed to her side, catching her before she hit the floor. Her heartbeat was stronger now, her breathing more steady. The core floated down and dimmed, its task complete. She looked at him, smiled weakly, and said, "I remember now." Jake helped her stand again, unsure what she meant, before he could ask. The walls began to shake violently. A voice echoed through the chamber, not hers, not the guardian's, but something cold and full of hate. The air turned heavy, and a second door opened at the far end, leading up. The girl grabbed Jake's hand and whispered, "We have to leave now." They ran through the shaking corridor as dust rained from the ceiling. Machines in the walls blinked awake, their eyes glowing blue. Some watched, some followed, but none attacked. Jake didn't know what was coming, but it was big, and it was waking up. Whatever power she had touched had stirred something ancient and angry. As they reached the final steps, light poured down from above. Jake pulled her into the open, back into the desert. But the sand wasn't calm anymore. It swirled like water in a storm, and from far in the distance, something began to rise, something massive, half-buried, now crawling back to life. The ground moaned beneath their feet. Jake turned around and saw the sand cracking open like broken glass. From the shattered dunes, a metallic limb rose slowly, followed by another. A giant machine, buried for centuries, was waking up. Its head broke through the surface, smooth and round with red lights circling its eyes. The alien girl stood frozen, her body glowing faintly. She whispered a single word in her old language, and Jake didn't need to understand it. He knew it meant danger. The machine locked its gaze on them, scanning with a high-pitched screech that made Jake's ears ring. It sent out a pulse of blue light that passed through their bodies. Jake's scanner beeped wildly, showing a warning he had never seen before. Ancient protocol, eliminate intruder. He grabbed her hand and ran, pulling her behind the nearest rock ridge. The machine's body dragged itself fully out of the sand, its arms armed with weapons from another time. Jake ducked just in time as a beam of energy blasted the rock above them into dust. They rolled down the slope and landed in a small canyon where the walls were narrow and high. The girl groaned in pain, but she didn't stop moving. She raised her hand and sent a small wave of energy behind them. The path collapsed in seconds, burying the way they came from. Jake looked at her, shocked. "You can do that?" he asked. She nodded weakly, her hands trembling. As if even that small burst had drained her, they kept moving, deeper into the canyon. The sun above was fading fast. Hidden behind growing sand clouds, Jake spotted a structure up ahead half ruined. Built into the canyon wall, they ran toward it, entering through a cracked stone door that slammed shut behind them. Inside, it was cool and dark, lit only by soft blue lines on the walls. This place was older than the chamber where he had found her. Strange carvings filled every surface. The air felt thick with memory. In the center of the room sat a long-dead machine. Broken, rusted, but its eyes flickered when they entered. It powered on slowly, scanning both of them with its dim light. Then it spoke not in alien tongue, but perfect English. "Welcome, heart of the dunes," it said, its voice soft and full of sadness. Jake looked at the girl, shocked. She lowered her head as if she didn't want the title. The machine turned to Jake and added, "And you are the one who woke her?" Jake stepped forward and said, "What is she?" The machine answered without delay, "She was created as a living key, part mind, part energy, part memory." Jake's chest tightened. "She's not just a person?" "She was, but also more," the machine said. "She holds the code to the ancient defense system. If she is awake, the machines will rise to erase her." Jake looked at her again, now understanding the pain in her eyes. She wasn't just hunted, she was the target of an old war still burning beneath the sand. The machine showed them a map, hidden tunnels, old outposts, and the remains of a place called the Core. The girl pointed at it, sending a weak pulse to activate the path. The Core was where she had been born, and maybe where this would end, but the machines were waking faster than expected. Outside, thunder shook the canyon, though there were no clouds in the sky. A second guardian rose in the distance, followed by another. Jake clenched his fists, then looked at the girl. "I'm not leaving you," he said firmly. "We fight together." She gave a faint smile, her first real smile since waking up. Then she reached toward the broken machine in the room and touched it gently. For a moment, nothing happened. Then its body lit up, repairing itself slowly. Metal forming over rust, eyes growing bright. The girl collapsed again, weak but smiling. Jake caught her, heart racing. The machine turned toward them, now fully awake. It said, "You gave her your strength." Jake looked down at her peaceful face and whispered, "She gave me more." The cave shook again, and the time to run was over. Now it was time to fight. The sandstorm outside screamed like a living creature. Lightning danced across the sky, with no clouds to call it home, and from the shadows of the broken cliffs, more metal giants rose silent, patient, deadly, inside the ancient shelter. The girl lay unconscious in Jake's arms, but her body glowed like she was dreaming of stars. Repaired Guardian stood watch beside them, its arms crossed like a soldier from an old war. Jake looked up at it, not sure if it was protector or prisoner. It had once hunted her kind, and now it stood still as if waiting for her command. Jake's voice broke the silence. "Tell me everything," the machine responded with a hum, and then words, slow and heavy. "She is not a weapon, not truly," it said. "She was a bridge between machines and her people." Jake frowned, confused. "What does that mean?" "She could speak to the old systems, control them, calm them," the Guardian replied. "But fear turned her people against her. They locked her away to stop the war. Not to end it, but to silence her." Jake looked down at her again, feeling something twist in his chest. He had seen enough war to know what fear could do. But burying someone alive just to keep power asleep, that was worse than war. Suddenly, the Guardian's eyes flashed red. "Contact approaching," it said. Enemy signals 23 units. Jake jumped to his feet, lifting the girl carefully and moving her behind a broken pillar. Outside, the storm went silent for a heartbeat, then exploded with sound as metal feet hit the stone floor above. The machines had found them. Jake looked around the room for anything tools. Weapons, even sharp rocks, nothing, just stone and old tech. The Guardian turned to Jake. "I will delay them. You must wake her." Jake shook her gently, then harder. Her eyes flickered but did not open. "Come on, Sari," he whispered. "You can't go back to sleep now." He pressed her hand against the wall where glowing lines pulsed, hoping something would happen. Nothing. Behind him, the Guardian stepped out through the door, and seconds later, the first explosion shook the room. Flashes of blue and orange fire lit the hallway. Jake turned back to her, desperate. Then he did the one thing he hadn't tried. He placed her hand against his chest, just over his heart. She gasped, and her body jumped as if struck by lightning. Her eyes flew open, glowing gold, now not white. Not silver, but fire. Her breath came fast, her body shaking. She looked at Jake and whispered, "I heard you." Then she stood up. All on her own, energy poured from her hands, forming shapes in the air symbols. Doors light. She stepped into the hallway, and the fire paused mid-air. The Guardian was on the ground, broken again. But the enemy machines had stopped moving. Their weapons were aimed but frozen, like something deep in their code had crashed. Sari raised her hands, and her voice filled the space, not loud, but real. She didn't speak English, but the machines understood. They turned away from Jake, from the chamber, from the war. One by one, they shut down, dropping their weapons to the floor. Sari fell to her knees, drained but victorious. Jake ran to her side and caught her just before she hit the ground again. "You stopped them," he whispered. "How?" She smiled faintly. "I reminded them." Jake held her tightly, heart racing. The Guardian, half broken, raised its head again and said, "The code obeys the true voice." And then it powered down. For a long moment, there was only silence. No war, no sandstorm, just the heartbeat of the girl who once had none. Jake looked at her, finally understanding. She wasn't made to fight. She was made to end the fight. And now that she was awake, the desert would never be the same again. The stars blinked above the desert like silent witnesses. Below them, something ancient stirred beneath the surface again, not with anger, but with memory. Jake sat beside the alien girl, Sari, watching the machines that once tried to kill her now stand still like statues. The battlefield had turned into a graveyard of sleeping giants. But Jake knew this wasn't the end. Not yet. Her hand was cold in his, but her eyes were open. Steady, alive, she was breathing, and the energy inside her was different now, more stable, more complete. He whispered, "We're not safe yet, are we?" Sari shook her head slowly, her golden eyes staring past the canyon wall. "There's one more place," she said, the words struggling from her lips. "The core." Jake nodded without asking why. The machines around them moved aside, opening a path through the broken desert. Even damaged, they obeyed her now, not out of fear, but something else, something deeper than programming. Recognition, maybe even respect. They traveled in silence, guided by old signals and starlight. The wind howled, but no sand touched them, as if the storm itself was afraid. Hours passed, or maybe only minutes. Time felt strange here. Then the ground shifted again, and a glowing doorway rose from beneath the dunes. It pulsed gently, like a heartbeat, waiting for her. Jake stepped back as Sari approached it. The air thickened, charged with invisible power. When she reached the edge, the door opened with no sound. Inside was a chamber so bright, Jake had to shield his eyes, and in the center was something floating shaped like a sphere, yet alive. Sari entered alone, her body glowing again, her steps calm. The sphere reacted to her presence, spinning faster, lights dancing across its surface. She spoke a word Jake couldn't hear. The sphere stopped, hovering before her like it was listening. Then it unfolded like petals, revealing a bright core. Inside, Jake wanted to run to her, but his legs wouldn't move. The room held him still, not by force, but by understanding. This moment wasn't his. Sari raised her hand and placed it against the core. Light exploded in every direction, blinding and warm. Flashes of her memories shot through the chamber, her birth, her betrayal, her burial. Then flashes of Jake, his kindness, his voice, his touch. He wasn't part of her past, but he had become her present. And now, her choice shaped the future. The core dimmed, its mission complete. She turned and walked back to Jake, her steps soft but certain. He caught her before she fell again, holding her tight. Outside, the desert shifted, the old war finally ending beneath the sand. The machines powered down for good this time, not asleep, but at peace. And above them, the sky cleared. Back at the base, no one believed Jake at first. They saw the marks on his gear, the dust in his lungs, the energy traces on his skin. But they didn't see her. Sari had vanished into the wind like a dream. Jake never spoke of the machines again, but he kept one thing close, a small glowing shard she had left in his hand. Years passed and legends grew, stories of a human who walked with forgotten machines, of a girl with gold eyes who stopped war, not with weapons, but with memory and voice. And some nights when the wind is just right, people say they hear her song beneath the sand, not a cry for help, not a call for war, just a heartbeat, one that had once stopped and was brought back to life by a human who refused to walk away.